Yunese Tampinti, Yunese Ghana Yatangi Yuanti. I want to acknowledge we're in beautiful Ghana country today. When we use the word Tampinti, hear the end of the word, the inti, which means forever. There's an exhibition here at MOD at the moment called Forever. And when we talk about forever, we talk about every moment counting in the present, every moment from the past counting, and every moment towards the future. I want to acknowledge the Ghana elders for teaching us this really clever and wise philosophy, which is every moment matters from our past, our present and our future. I acknowledge the elders, past and present, their unbroken connection to this place. And their reminder, Nutu, there is not a separate word for learning and teaching in Ghana philosophy. It is one. We're always learning, even though we're teaching, always teaching, even though we're learning. So thank you to the Ghana elders. I want to acknowledge Sally. Has been an incredible encouragement for all of us over such a long time. Actually, she's only 21, but you know, she's been doing this. She's got the yards on this. Huge respect to you, Sally. You've enabled a whole generation of us to see ourselves in this space, to inspire us, to remind us of what we can do together. So I was asked to speak on the importance of learning and teaching for the sector. I've twisted a little bit to talk about my experiences applying for a teaching award, because I thought that might be helpful for you. But the most important thing I'm going to say to you is education makes the single biggest difference to the lives of education, to individuals and their communities. That's how important you are. Okay? It's not what's at stake. So it's not a pressure question. It's that's the difference that you make. Right? So when you come into this space, I want you to remember with pride what difference you make. So what does that difference look like? Well, I'm a first in family from Tasmania. Okay? Half of Tasmania has functional literacy issues. The other half is okay. But it all adds up to a complex situation where people who are really talented don't get the access and the success at education that they ought to. And I've seen my family go from nobody having a university degree to all of my nieces and nephews either enrolled or teaching about it or talking about it. Even at the age of 5, my niece Fable has got very strong opinions. Reminded me very early on, she said, "You can't be a professor." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Because you don't look like this." And she showed me a picture of a guy in a Quentin Blake book wearing a tweed jacket. And my sister-in-law said, "No, that's not true." And she goes, "Show me evidence." I know she's going to do law or something else like that, Sally. I reckon she's headed in your direction. We've all had an experience coming to education. Whatever your experience has been, it is powerful. It's important and it's wonderful. And if I asked you all, are you a trailblazer in some way, you all will be, in your own way. But how do we recognise that in ourselves and come to the space of putting yourself forward for a teaching award? How do you get your mind? Because that's the big challenge. So I'm going to give you some practical tips on this one. It sounds like old people giving you advice. Please don't, because I'll be asking you too. So I'm going to ask the question first. Did you think that you should apply for a teaching award, or did somebody else suggest that you apply for a teaching award? So that's the first thing. Put your hand up if somebody else suggested it to you. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Put your hand up if you thought of it yourself. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. That's even more awesome. That's my first tip. Often people see more in us than we see in ourselves. They see the trailblazer. If you've seen it in yourself, rockin' awesome. That's great. But it's quite often the case that other people see that in ourselves. And it might be that they're the word of encouragement that gets us going in the application. So it was my students who said to me, it was so great, in 1999, one of them said, "You know what, when you put aside the typed notes and you speak from your heart, you know how to teach. Put the notes away." What great advice was that student. Really great advice. That student should take a cut, a royalty on giving me advice. She just said, I can see you are just so interesting. You tell us stuff, you put it away and you do that. It was that student that encouraged me. Right? You will be able to think of other people that have encouraged you. And you need that. Because applying for an award's not an easy piece of work. Right? We're going to talk about alignment in just a moment. So the first thing is, it doesn't matter whether somebody else suggested it or you suggested it, they're both legitimate. Please don't doubt yourself and say, oh, I've met other people that go, no, we take it in turns in the department and somebody else's turn first. I go, no, it's your turn. And in fact, you both can apply. There's no quota. Nothing bad happens if more than one person applies from an area. So please don't talk yourself out when somebody points out that you should do this, okay? Whether it's your students, PhD students, whether it's your colleagues, whether it's somebody outside of the university, it's all legitimate. It's all true, accept it. That can be the hardest thing about a teaching award, is actually accepting somebody telling you that you're really good. Because you'll think of a billion reasons why you could be better. You're great, okay? You wouldn't be in this room unless you were great. Accept it. So that's the first thing. Doesn't matter where it comes from, accept it. The second thing is, it's a lot of work. Do I have the time to write pages about myself? Yeah? How do you feel about writing about yourself? Your faces are just saying it all. Yeah? Does it make you feel a bit uncomfortable? So let's, yeah? Anybody want to talk about that? How does it feel when you have to talk about yourself?
Self-promotion makes me cringe.
Thank you. Good on you for being courageous and letting us all have permission to say that. Thank you. Makes you cringe. Anybody else?
You've got to be very modest.
Right. Got to be modest.
I think we're quite lucky because we're actually going as a team.
Oh, so there you go.
So what I love is that we can support each other.
You've got mutual affirmation.
Yeah.
And nobody chickens out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Other people, how do you feel? Yeah.
So much of the success that we have is from our students, and sometimes I find it hard to separate
Right.
my students did that work.
Right. Is it they get the award or I get the award?
Yeah.
Make no mistake, when you get awarded, they get awarded. They are recognised in what you achieve. Okay? It's not mutually exclusive. It's okay. How many of you are struggling with the notion that you might use the word I, we, I? Yeah, put your hand up if you're finding that a bit. Yeah, okay. Oh, I did this, I did that. A tip, early on, great person at Macquarie, I was applying for my Macquarie Teaching Award and they said, you know what? Come on in. You're very welcome. You do not apologise. We talk about teaching, it's fabulous. You can shut the door. A tip I was given early on, if you don't like the word I, a couple of things I learned was they said, my students see in me. My students see in me this. And the evidence that supports this is blah, right? People tell me that I am X, and this is confirmed by Y. So if you are sick to death of writing first person about yourself and you don't like it, people tell me that. My students give me feedback. So you know how you normally insert student quotes from student evaluation in the middle of the text? You don't need to do that. You can say, my students tell me that I'm X and I can prove this with this evidence, right? That will take away some of the ick factor if you feel uncomfortable about writing about yourself. And I tell you what, you'd have to go an enormously long way to brag about yourself in a way that a provost would say, I'm sorry. For every 3,000 people, there's probably one or two that you go, I'm sorry, you're not it. Let me really confirm that with you. Outstanding educators tend not to be like that. So we've got a tip there about switching from the I to other people telling me, looking from the outside, what do I look like? How do I get a sense of me from the point of view of other people? That also works in promotion applications. It's a red hot tip. It's a really useful one for using. People tell me that, and here's the evidence why. This confirms it. Nice piece of evidence. Less uncomfortable than I did this, I did that. All right? People tell me that. Let's choose a verb. I supported or I designed. Which is the better one?
Active.
Both are good, but check your verbs. You don't have to be all I. You can be other people talking about you. Check your verbs. Go through your application, and if you are saying helped, supported, assisted, maybe, just maybe you might be underselling. We designed, we implemented, we tested, we tried. Right? So underline them to see whether you are actually giving yourself enough credit for what you've done. Think about it. All right, so that's important. And then I think, Sally, your view on this will be important. Many of the teaching applications that I've read, people have gone, I started here and I went here. They actually tell a story. So the student saying to me, give the notes up and do this was great feedback. It showed that I was learning as a teacher. And I have to say, in promotion applications, if it's all perfect, you've got to wonder. Nobody has got it completely right. So here's where you can acknowledge, this is the journey that I'm on. I've come from here to here. We had a few false starts. We did this. This is how we learned. This is how we re-strengthened. We used the evidence to get better. I've used the student evaluations, my peer feedback. People have helped me to learn how to do things. And I got better and better. So that's a good narrative to say. Okay? So there's a few tips on the casting of the application there. And the work is worth it. Because by the end of that, if you weren't at the start, you should be in no doubt of how proud you are, right? You should be incredibly proud of who you are and what your contribution is. Your contribution changes the economy and it changes society for the better. That's what you do, okay? Now, repurposing. A teaching application is useful for all kinds of things. It is useful for a promotion application. It doesn't matter which way round you go, but you can be, you called it triple dipping. It's quite appropriate because the audiences are 3 different audiences. It's not plagiarism because you are who you are. You're just making a statement about who you are to 3 different audiences. The 3 audiences are Institutional Teaching Awards and the National Teaching Awards. The Higher Education Academy and Advanced HE. Promotion. 3 opportunities to advance recognition of your outstanding work by writing about yourself. Okay? They're not all perfectly aligned, but they're pretty good actually, and it is absolutely feasible to write one and use it as the basis for the other. So you can save yourself some work. If you've already and just been successful in promotion, you could look to that application and say, what have I got in there that's useful? If you've just been successful for an internal institutional award, very helpful. If you've just got a fellowship with the AGA, extremely helpful. If your institution doesn't support AGA, you can look at the criteria. They're all useful documents and you can use all of them. Okay, so there's no rule that says that you can't move between those things because you are the same fabulous teacher. You are who you are. It's just 3 different audiences. So don't feel bad if you are using the materials across. Okay, so that's the other tip that I've got. Save the work because it is a bit of work. It is a bit of work. So save yourself the effort if you can. All right? So you've had a go. You've said, I've got enough of the word I in there. Others. I've thought about my verbs. I've got some examples in there. I've thought about my 3 audiences. Do not kill your readers with detail. You do not need to put every single thing that you've done in there, because it is overwhelming reading other people's achievements and going, oh dear God, that's so amazing. You are amazing. You don't need to put it all in there, because there's not a group of people sitting behind the scenes going, I need to see 15 things. And if there's not 15 things, the person won't win. They don't do it that way. So there's not a machine or a quota sitting behind this process. They're looking at you holistically. How does it all line up? Where is it coming from? I told you I'm a first in family. How did I learn? A student told me that I needed to do X. Did I practice talking about myself so that I was comfortable? Yes, I did. Did I express what I was saying to different audiences so I could build up the experience? Yes, I did. All great experiences. It's teaching me to figure out what I want to highlight and what I don't need to highlight. Okay? Because it is all fabulous, but there's going to be some elements. So by the end of reading your application, I should be able to see what your fingerprint is, whether you're a group or an individual. I should be able to recognise you as a teacher. If I walked into your classroom, I go, oh yeah. If I walked into your program, oh yeah, I've got it. I've got the essence of who you are. If you're not sure who that is, best thing to do is ask other people. How would you describe what you see? That helps you with others say that I am. How are the students describing you? What do they repeatedly say about you? Now, in my case, they'd occasionally go, that woman with the brown hair, she's really good. Okay. It came from a good place. Unfortunately, the 3 of us that were teaching the course were all women with brown hair. So it was not particularly helpful. But they did often say things like, when you put the notes away, or you do this, or I love the way. So I was teaching big history, which is the history of the universe to the future, in 13 weeks with first year students in the humanities, and saying we're not getting to human beings until week 6. Can you just imagine the response in week 1? Some people were crying, going, we're going to do mathematics. And I said, the only maths you'll need is that your score will add up to 100 at the end. And if you don't know how to do that, we'll do it for you. We'll absolutely do you for. But can you just imagine the anxiety of students coming into the classroom who've chosen a humanities degree, and this woman stands up and says, we're going to talk about interstellar evolution with planets. And we're going to talk about geology. And they're going, oh, I didn't choose a STEM degree. I chose humanities not to be in STEM. And you go, it's okay. Because I'm actually going to claim all of STEM for the humanities, right? But just, that's the other thing to remember. They're giving you feedback. Can you just imagine what they're like when they first meet you? What do you think they think? Don't know. What do you think?
They're intimidated.
They're intimidated. They're a bit overawed. After all, you're the legend, because they all talk to one another, and they choose your program and your teaching because they've all talked to one another. And so go and do her class because she's awesome. Right? So they already know a bit, but they're overawed. Had you ever thought about that? That they're overawed by you? And they might also be overawed by the university experience. If you're teaching in first year, or you're focused on PhD students, they may be overawed by the experience. So see it from their perspective. If I walk into your classroom, I'm sure that you not only do things in your program or your teaching that are really interesting and amazing, I bet you do great things that make them feel included, feel safe, and feel like they're successful. And when you win that teaching award, they're winning that teaching award. Right? If it makes you feel any better, you're applying this for this teaching award for them. You're applying for every first in family. You're applying for your colleagues who are applying for promotion behind you. You're applying for every teaching or education-focused staff member. I'm not saying that to pressure you. I'm saying how inspirational you are. You're applying so that as you climb the ladder, you're putting in a rung for them. You're creating that growth for them. So that's why you're applying, because you want to celebrate their success as well as your own success, if that makes you feel better. Yeah, it's about their success, your chance to show off how good those students are, how good that program is, how amazing it is to be in higher education. That's what this is about, okay? That's what this is about, okay? So let's sum up. It comes from somewhere. We all have a story and a reason for being in higher education. Be proud of who you are. Remember that there's more than one form of address or pronoun. There's first person, but you can use third person and second person. You can vary the voice to get other people to reflect back how successful you are, and that may help you to feel more confident about what you're doing. The reason we apply is because we want to amplify the success and the opportunity of others as well as ourselves. It's okay to use the application as the bones for multiple things. And at the end of the day, the process itself is brilliant, because there is no better reminder of how important education is for those students who come into your classroom or access your services and they look at you in awe. They're inspired by you. And your job is to see perhaps them in your position 10 years from now. So I'm going to finish with where it comes from. I'm going to go back to that. At the age of 5, my dad took me into uni. He was a professional staff member, incredibly proud of his achievements. And there was this really tall guy standing next to him, and I said, "Dad, who's that?" And he said, "He's a professor." And I said, "What's a professor?" Because I didn't know. I'm like my 5-year-old niece. "What's a professor?" It's a guy in a tweed suit. And he was wearing a tweed suit. And that professor leaned over and he said, "A professor is kind. And a professor is you." That's where it comes from. So never, ever forget that every moment that you've contributed, you probably have influenced somebody like me. So when you read the CV and you're a bit, well, that's your success. Yeah. It didn't come from nowhere. I'm here because of you. And you taught me. Okay? Accept the compliment. Bag the win. Write it down. And run. And never ever believe that you are somehow tier 2 playing for Australia A. You are not. You are inspirational, you're amazing, and you know what? You can do it. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to stop there. Thank you. I do have time.
You have a few minutes for questions?
Couple minutes of questions? Yeah, totally.
So, there's no way there can't be a question.
You're asking him.
Yeah.
Grades right now.
You should.
If we're there, can you just give it to us?
I'd love to. But if I just gave it to you, I have to say, chairing promotion committees, just reading and learning about people, it blows your mind. You just sit there and you go, I bumped into you into the corridor, I said hello to you in the coffee shop all these times, and I never knew the half of what you were doing until you told me. And I'm glad you did tell me. So I'd love to. But actually then I would only know this much about you.
Someone who gets to mentor people, that's what I find as well. You see them all the time, and then you read their award and you go, oh wow, I didn't know that.
You were keeping that secret all along. You just want to say to them, you hid that one away really effectively. Why are you hiding that? That's really amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have, I'll start, do you have you've talked so much about the positive side of it, We are still wrapped sometimes with those negative emotions that pull us back. And, you know, I'm guilty of that myself. Do you have any advice around just that? And the positive side's wonderful, but that just eats away at you sometimes. So, any other advice about how you just sort of the traps that you can fall into with those mental?
Yep. You can gaslight yourself out of not applying because you just think, I haven't quite done enough yet, I need a few more years. Nobody's told me that I'm as great as I am. Oh, that student comment's just completely put me off. That's a good sign that you're probably a great applicant if you've got that level of doubt about yourself, because you had no doubt, then you probably are not a great teacher at learning how to do better, right? So the doubts are, just recognise them for what they are. They are just pieces of feedback. And, you know, any great teacher will take one piece of feedback and go, oh no, that's really devastating, even though there's 99 other pieces of feedback that are pretty awesome. You focus on the one. Right? So you can be tempted to be a little biased against yourself. So I think you can talk yourself out of it by just saying, I need 100% of everybody to agree that I'm amazing. You're never going to get that. But your student evaluations will be phenomenal. And that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So this first thing, just recognise those voices of doubt in yourself, put it to bed, hang around with people that are positive about who you are and help you to see. I've also had just, you know, great comments, you know, oh, isn't just a PM's award winner, it's just a show and tell, you know, just, and I go, rubbish. I'm proud to have been DVC Research. The first DVC Research with the teaching award. Why not? Absolutely, why not? I'm totally entitled to do that. Tell you what, comes in handy in promotion committees where people say, oh, should we promote this teaching focused person? And the DVCR goes, heck yeah. And they go, where does that come from? And I go, well, read the CV. Right? So that's the other thing, is occasionally you just get comments and you go, yeah, whatever. But I know the difference that you make, and I know how wonderful you are, and you've got a lot of fans. You might not credit that, but you've got a lot of fans. So you've got to remember. And for every one person who's slightly unkind, there's about 1 billion that are kind. I believe in survival of the friendliest. Yeah, not survival of the, you know, the fittest. Actually, most success in higher education comes from people who are kind to one another, generous, fantastic. Yeah, hang around with those people. They're good people. And don't let the other stuff get you down. Just don't. I know it's easy for me to say, well, distinguished professor, you can say whatever you like. You know, go, but I was a level A. I was a casual. Yeah, I was a casual. So first in family casual, right? We all come from somewhere. And you just go through periods where you think, oh, just collapse by self-doubt. And then you get to my stage and you go, yeah, whatever. And occasionally people say, oh, didn't I go, I'm a distinguished professor, yeah, whatever.
Just sort of piggybacking on David's question, how do you discern, this is probably what I'm struggling with, how I discern what I think everybody should do?
Yep.
And what perhaps is not what everybody. So, like, sometimes people, doesn't everybody do that? Like, and what makes that different and special? Thank you. Yeah. I know.
That's such a good question. I totally get where you come from. That's such a good question, because you probably think that's what everyone does. And I go, well, no. The only way to learn that is to actually to apply for things like that. And you discover, no, not everybody does do that. It's actually exceptional practice, but you can talk, you just go, well, everyone does that. And go, no, nobody does that. You do that. You're amazing at doing that, right? So this is where talking to other people and asking them and saying, if you were going to describe my approach to teaching, what words would you use? And then they will start giving you some words to build your application around. And I bet they're not going to use words like normal, solid. They're not going to use words like that. They're not going to use those words because you're here, right? The reason you're here is because your institution already recognises you are fabulous. So you might need to ask your colleagues and say, if you were walking to my classroom, help me to describe the experience of what it's like. Or our program, help me to describe what's special about it.
I guess it is tricky to extend that as well. If teaching is often quite a personal experience, you don't have people who come into a classroom and look at what you do and then describe it to you. So I wonder if there is opportunities for, and it might feel uncomfortable, and people have time though, to come and say, can you just come and hang out and just watch and then tell me about it? Or something like that might be a way to help in those moments where it's not as visible.
Yeah, that's right. You can invite people in, get them to give you a bit of a hand on this. The other, I think, advice is if you look at the criteria for the HEA fellowships, you can really spook yourself. I need to have all of those at 190%. You do not. Okay, so do not talk yourself. You look at the promotion criteria. Oh, I don't have all 500 of them, therefore I can't apply. So the other thing is you've got characteristics about who you are. It is personal. It's absolutely personal, but it's powerful, right? And yeah, I think other people can be really helpful in describing that, okay? And give them the chance, and then repay the generosity. Do the same for them.
One of the things I've struggled with previously in writing these applications is evidence and impact.
Mm-hmm.
How do you gather that evidence rather than just out the teaching, SETs?
Yeah, I had exactly the same challenge when I was writing mine. And I've described to you how I was teaching big history with these students who they still email me and go, they're now senior public servants. I can't, I still remember the day that you do X, and you just feel like a billion years old. It's fantastic. It's really great. I decided that I wanted to introduce self-assessment for the students. Not only to tell me how they were doing against so we did the rubric together. That was really entertaining. In week 1, for the students to tell me, what criteria do you think historians look for? And footnotes, they all said. You're all obsessed with footnotes, and they all put that up the top. That's what you do. You do footnotes, you're obsessed. And it was great feedback for the profession. You are obsessed with footnotes. And I said, is there anything else? No, just footnotes. You just do footnotes. That's what you look for. And if we have 100 footnotes, you will give me an HD. And I'm going, oh, that's really interesting. So we started off by getting them to build the rubric. So the evidence became, the rubric was part of the evidence to say this is where they started. They thought. And I said, does a history assessment have an argument in it? No. We just tell you what you want. Really, I said, that's really interesting. You don't have any views? No. Our job is just to tell you what you are looking for. Oh, really? Okay, that's really interesting. So just calibrating where they started on a rubric, or taking the rubric that we already had and saying, weight these for me. Which is the most important one, which is the least important one, just to get a sense of where they're from. All right, when you mark yourself, I don't just want you to mark yourself against the rubric, because we've had a big discussion about that. I want you to tell me how you're different from the last assessment. So what have you learned and what haven't you learned? So not just tick, 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 I'm doing really well or I'm not doing well or whatever. What's the difference between assessment 1 and assessment 2 and assessment 3 and assessment 2? What I discovered, which blew my mind, was they then started telling me their own personal histories in the context of the world's biggest history. It blew my mind. They found an opportunity to write their own story into the biggest of all stories. So the thing I learned was a rubric is a learnable moment. When a student tells you, no, it's all about the footnotes and nothing about the argument, they're giving you a starting point. So that's evidence. When they were assessing themselves, they were giving me evidence about their ability to be accurate or not accurate. And the first time they self-assessed, I said, I'm not going to mark you on that. But in the second assessment and the third, I am actually part of your mark is dependent on how accurate you are. That really focused their minds. To take it seriously, 5% of your mark will be how well you do in diagnosing what you're good at and what you need to learn. Because the worst thing is you put all that time into marking things, they don't even pick it up. I'll tell you what, they all picked it up because they knew that they had to do that for the next. And then the third ones tell me what the difference is. They were beginning to use language to describe their learning journey and their journey with history and their anxieties around STEM and their need to revisit that and coming out the other side and saying, I adore STEM. I think this is the best thing I've ever done in my life. You've changed So it was really finding a way to get them to describe the learning journey rather than me describing the learning journey. Because the student evaluation just tells you at the end. What I was trying to catch was in situ, can they describe where they've started, where they're going, how they're going? So you probably have got artefacts like that, right? You've probably got artefacts like that. Every rubric they've contributed to, if they've done a self-assessment, if they've described things, they've done peer review, you will have their narrative around things. Catch it in mid-flight. If you're not doing it at the moment, it's worth doing. Figure out how to build it in. Last time I did it, it was, I've just written a book on artificial historians, just great fun. Gave them the textbook and said, how do you know this is written by a human? Give me some feedback. All right, they said it's clearly not written by a human because, okay, well, it is actually written by a human. So how would you improve it? Let's pretend it's a machine. Let's train it to make a better textbook. The students then actually redesigned the covers of their textbooks, added a billion footnotes, added pictures of women in, stuck pictures of women over the top of discussions of 18th century men sitting around. Just a really phenomenally great experience. That gave me another artefact, was to say, take the textbook that we'd been using for years and years and years, nobody liked it, and the students then took that thing and said, right, I'm going to show you how to do it properly. And I hope that they go out and write textbooks because they would do a better job, most of them. And as I was saying, I'm just giving you some examples of things that are artefacts. All of those things are good artefacts that you can use to describe yourself, the journey, and they're in situ versus after the fact. Okay? Any other questions? Another comment, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. Deep learning, cultural authority and cultural knowledge is deeply special. In my role as part-time Vice-Chancellor, first part-time Vice-Chancellor in Australia. Whoa. Teaching award winner becomes part-time Vice-Chancellor. That's pretty awesome, isn't it? I have the privilege of supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander portfolio. I tell you what, the learning and the deepness of that learning is so special. It is so special. So if you are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, please share your innovations with us, because I'm done with the deficit talk. I'm really done with it. I just see incredible innovation every time. If you are wanting to learn more, put yourself into that space. Because I think the other thing is a teaching award in Australia shouldn't read the same as a teaching award in Britain or the US. If we just figured this out and listen and learn more, gee whiz, we'd be special. Okay? So if you are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, can I please encourage you? Teach us, teach yourself, show us how amazing you are. If you know Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues, please encourage them to apply. Yeah? We've got the Bonner Award, but we really want to see. This is what makes us exceptional. Yeah? Any other questions?
Just thank you so much for your time. It's just been riveting.
Can I thank you? Can I thank Sally? And I want to thank all the people that help us all to write teaching award applications, all the people that read them, give us advice. I want to thank all the people that gave me advice and still do. It's a great community. Makes a big difference. So a big thank you to all of the teachers that are helping us all to get better, and we can all still get better. So thank you. I'm big excited about the awards ceremony. This is the first time I get to attend. I've been at UniSA for 5.5 years. I finally busted in. Broken a move. I've told all my team, I said, you didn't invite me. And I said, wasn't invited. So no, I've invited myself this year. I'm very excited about it.
The VC, did we?
Huh?
We invited the VC and the VC said
well, I think I got invited, which is pretty exciting. I am beyond excited, and I am going to claim every single UniSA award as me being responsible for that, even though I only became provost in October. I'm bagging the win.
We love your advocacy in teaching and learning. It's
Totally
great.
proud of it. Totally proud of it. Thank you. Congratulations to all of you in advance. As I say, you wouldn't be here unless you were really special. Remember that. And I'll see some of you later. All right. Thank you. Rock on.